Like I can say, hey, this is the best body type, or I think this person's going to work. But the athletes that show up to the games are the living proof of it, And it's like, it's the reason why, most point guards in the NBA are 6'3" or below. Now granted, you do have the freaks, you do have Jokic bringing the ball up, you do have LeBron playing point forward. But it's just a natural part of it. I think that stuff is cool, right? Like we're just like self-selecting. It's like this little bit of, survival of the fittest in a very small, controlled environment.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is the co-host and co-founder of Talking Elite Fitness. He's a TV host for the CrossFit Games, a fitness nerd, an absolute sports junkie, a true rig shaker in the sport of fitness. My man, Tommy Marquez. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I feel flattered. That was a great intro. Much more than I deserve.
The rig shaker part is cool though, because that's kind of what you guys use a little bit with Talking Elite Fitness, and it's just fun because you get to chop it up in the world of not just fitness, but like the behind the scenes of what's going on with health and wellness and the business side and sponsors. And I just appreciate rig shaker because it's very, very true in how you guys use that phrase.
Yeah, we got to represent our fellow big athletes. I'm not a small guy, so I never have been.
Yeah, totally, man. With that being said, let's go ahead and kick off the conversation. Since we're talking about Team Too Tall, we chopped it up a little offline. Our Lakers, man, they turned it around after that trade deadline. They moved some pieces around, acquired D'Angelo Russell, and moved Russell Westbrook. What have been your thoughts since the trade deadline there?
I thought Rob Pelinka saved his job. It was one of those like,
Same.
I got to pull off some wizardry to get this team back on track because the window for AD and LeBron is closing. And I got to get some pieces that bring some outside shooting and bring some defensive energy to the team. And I thought like Rui Hachimura, I thought Vanderbilt does that. And you have some really flexible pieces now that if you look at the Warriors series, they basically were switching. They were able to go switch for switch with the Warriors in adjusting their starting lineups accordingly. And that level of flexibility off the bench and depth is like what wins you playoff games. And I love it because, I grew up with the Showtime Lakers, a little flash and dash here. And, whether it was Michael Cooper and James Worthy and Magic, I like seeing this like team that is built on defensive like fortitude and being the team that can lock down anyone on the wing and then freeing up AD to just like be a rim protector, which is awesome. And it's beating the Warriors for me as a guy who grew up in the Bay Area and all my friends were talking so much trash. I have bragging rights for the next year now, especially after my Cowboys lost to the Niners. So
Totally, man. I also think I think one of the really cool things about the Lakers too is you don't see it as much during the regular season, but you definitely see it in the playoffs. And it's what you said, you can switch everything because it's a game of mismatches. And if you watched every time LeBron brought the ball down, he was looking to try to get a switch onto Steph Curry or onto Clay, which forced those guys to really defend. And when you force those guys to defend on one side, now they're fatigued on the other side in their pursuits to try to score 20, 30, 40 points. And I think that really shook up the series a little bit. The shot making from Lonnie Walker and Austin Reeves was incredible. I mean, they stepped up to the table and did some things that, quite frankly, as fans, we didn't expect that. Especially Lonnie Walker's 17 in the fourth. I think that was that game 3 or 4. That was incredible.
It was actually, let's see, they went up 3. It was game 4, yeah. So they went up 3-1, and that's the stuff that like you can't plan for, right? And that's like the magic of the pressure cooker that is the playoffs. And oh man, like I totally agree with you. Forcing those guys to play defense, heavy legs never makes a great shooter, and being able to do that, like the Lakers, they love to run a high pick and roll with Anthony Davis and find their mismatch, and it's just created nightmares all
It's going to
playoff
be
one.
interesting in this next series to see if they can put Anthony Davis in the high pick and roll to pull Jokic out of the paint a little bit, see if they can create some mismatches and get him a little bit fatigued. But, man, Jokic is an incredible player. It's going to be interesting to see this Lakers-Nuggets series. And I'm excited, man. The NBA playoffs definitely have caught my attention.
Yep, I'm stoked to see it. My brother played with Aaron Gordon in high school, played against him, and so I've been kind of following his career. Jokic is like a creative player. Like when you go to create your own guy, you're like, I'm going to make him 7 feet tall. I'm going to make him as big as possible, but he's also going to have great handles and have a great 3-point shot. So he just doesn't make any sense, and it's going to be a good matchup for sure.
For sure, man. There's a statement that you put on your Instagram after the 2023 Open, and that was, don't expect results for work you didn't do. I really like that one. It's humble, it's honest, probably stings a little bit, but life gets a little busy sometimes. And, just going back to our Laker analogy, Lonnie Walker, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. He had numerous games of DMP, didn't play, and then came off the bench cold and performed. And that just shows that behind the scenes, even when he's not necessarily in front of the limelight, he's putting in the work.
Yeah.
That's a prime example. And then to flip the script, you're taking off with Talking Elite Fitness. You're busier than you probably ever have been. You just got married not too long ago. Life is moving quick, and you're sneaking in workouts where you can. You're growing, you're evolving. All the things that you seem to touch seem to grow a little bit faster, which is an incredible compliment, but that also means that sometimes the Open takes a backseat.
Trident Coffee is sponsoring this episode of the Invictus Mindset Podcast. My guys over at Trident taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good and bad, and everything in between. At Trident, they're storytellers. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They help create connections through symbology and storytelling that engage their customers on an emotional level, and this distinguishes them from other coffee brands. You can find Trident in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. They offer over 14 plus nitro cold brews along with dairy-free options. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from their keto bakery. All these options will allow you to support your health and fitness journey with Trident Coffee. They're more than just a coffee company. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Once again, that's tridentcoffee.com. Use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Take your coffee experience to the next level. Two important factors for us over at Invictus Mindset are true care and attention to detail. My friends over at RX Smart Gear have been bringing innovative fitness tools to the market since 2009. From their award-winning Evo speed ropes to their amazing gymnastics grips to their line of inflatable fitness equipment, they're constantly looking to problem solve within the fitness industry. They're always allowing us to have our gear work for us rather than against us. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use discount code Invictus Mindset to shop their latest cutting edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you.
Unfortunately.
What was your Open experience like? And, how are you doing managing all the different plates in your world?
My Open experience was very unique. It was probably, from a results, like a number on the leaderboard standpoint, probably one of the worst ones I've had in 5-6 years. But it was an understood kind of give and take. I just, the months leading up to it and the time I had to dedicate to training was very specific. Normally, whether you like to admit it or not, most people, even if you're not a competitive athlete, when Christmas comes around, you're like, it opens around the corner. Maybe I'll start, doing a little skill work here or putting a little extra work in here. But as the season ramped up, whether it was Wadapalooza or getting ready for the Open or planning travel arrangements, things like that, it seemed like I was still very much confined to my normal routine of, train 4, maybe 5 times a week, taking a class, that's it. With spurts of I'm going to be on the road for multiple weeks at a time, and I'm going to have to do what I can and be okay with that. And so as a result, I actually got to do the first open workout down at Invictus, and the time window that I had to do it was very narrow. I was actually about to go on a bachelor party with one of my best friends and all my best friends from growing up. We were on a cruise, so we took off from LA, we ported in San Diego. I got off the boat, I went to Invictus, took it as part of one of the morning classes, got back on the boat, had the weekend celebrating one of my best friends, came back, snuck a redo in as soon as I got home, just before the buzzer, and then that was it. And that was a situation where, I would have liked to had the results that I've had in that test because I've done it multiple times. But I also understood that I had some very unique experiences in line and things that I wanted to do that were very valuable to me. And so the give and take of that is like, hey, I might have to sacrifice a few muscle ups and some calories on the rower here in order to properly celebrate and be present with my friends. And then, week 2 was on the road. I got to call the Open announcement. We did it in New Jersey. I basically got back from the bachelor party weekend, first week of the Open, unpacked my bag, repacked it, turned around, flew to New Jersey, called 23.2 with Sean, had an awesome time at Bison CrossFit, got to celebrate those people, and then came home and was only able to do it once just because our timing, we had to leave early and we flew in late. That was my only opportunity to do the workout. So I got to do it once and that was it. I did it, with my Santa Cruz family here, which was great. I wanted to get at least one workout with them in for the Open. And then I was back on the road again because for week 3, we went to Indianapolis for the Combine. We had an opportunity to go out and check that out and be a part of that experience. And it was a very unique and special opportunity for us. So we jumped at it and our team was all over the place. And so that meant that I did the Open workout at a local affiliate there. So 3rd Open workout, I guess, in a different location. And, I guess my 3rd time zone for the 3 weeks. And then that's just what it was. But the whole time I was honest with myself. I know that, hey, I wasn't getting to, curate my week around these workouts and do the workout, take notes, try and, push myself on a redo. It was like, hey, I'm going to get it in when I can, be happy that I have the opportunity to get these tests in and that honestly, that there's a great network of affiliates that I can go do that at and be happy with the result and move forward. Because, I have plenty more years of fitness ahead of me for sure.
I love that. What I'm hearing is that fitness is serving all the things that you want to do in your life as opposed to owning you.
No doubt.
And I think it's a great takeaway because all of us, whether we're in pursuit of high-level CrossFit competition or not, anytime there's a competition, we're going to try to give our best, and there's going to be an influx of emotions based on the result. And, you still look good, still feel good, health biomarkers still as good as they can be, given the nature of your growing travel schedule and your job. And so very proud of you. I thought it was a cool, honest assessment.
Thanks, man.
That I could very much relate to. And so, I want to give you a quick shout out on that. I want to jump into the Combine. Mm-hmm. Noble is evolving really fast. They're doing some really cool things. Todd Melanie played an incredible role, and he's since moved on a very cool announcement. Very happy for him and the things that are coming his way. And what was the Combine like? How was that experience?
This episode is brought to you by HVMN, Health via Modern Nutrition. They launched the world's first ketone drink in 2017, and then in 2022 launched the version 2 of their exogenous ketone product line called Ketone IQ. I found that incorporating ketones into my morning routine increased my daily focus and energy. The beauty of this product is that you can stack it. It doesn't even have to replace your morning routine. My morning routine looks like taking the dog on a walk, hitting my daily shot of Ketone IQ, hopping in the cold plunge, and then finishing it off with a nice Trident coffee while I soak up some morning sunlight. Try out some ketones for yourself by using the code Invictus for 20% off Ketone IQ. Ketones are a super efficient fuel for your brain that leaves you feeling energized and clear-headed. Give it a shot. I promise you won't regret it. Once again, use code Invictus for 20% off Ketone IQ. Move fast and break shit. This is one of the core values at LSKD and something that we fully resonate with here at the Invictus Mindset Podcast. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. Through my experiences with LSKD products and their team members, I have found a brand that I can call home that keeps me performing at my highest level through fitness and business. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer, so I can go from training at the gym directly to meetings, client consults, running errands, or preparing for podcasts. The LSKB vibe has finally reached San Diego, and we want you to experience it too. Go to us.lskd.co to start shopping today. We want to inspire you to chase the vibe.
It's crazy, right? Because I think it was an interesting cross-section between what we do in training, just in a training and fitness methodology, and, a juggernaut of a sport organization in the NFL, right? Like 99% of the time in the NFL, what matters is what you produce on the field. But for like this short window of time, these guys that are trying to honestly change the trajectory of them and their families' lives for the foreseeable future, for generations possibly to come, what happens in the gym and like the measurables in the gym suddenly jump to the forefront or become an important aspect. Now, granted, they still do field work and all these other things, but it also feels like there's this slight little piece of the Venn diagram where it's like, oh, all right, they're lifting now. They got to be fast, explosive, sprint, jump, do all these things that we do in the gym regularly, and now they're being judged by it, and it can actually have a benefit for them if they show up in a big way. So it was cool that, one, to see Noble become the training partner, the title sponsor of that. I was amazed that nobody had done that in the past, that the combine was just like, oh yeah, like there's no formal warm-up area, there's no training partner for this. Like it seemed like athletes were warming up in the hallways of the convention center before, and it's like, how was this not something that was more developed? So it was a natural fit then to see someone like Noble, who's, comes from the training space to jump in there. I thought it was really cool seeing the media side of it and being involved in the media side of it, of something that I had looked up to pretty much my entire life. Being on press row and seeing the press conferences and seeing all the NFL GMs and teams there doing their thing and just getting to see what that looks like behind the scenes. I didn't come from a traditional sports journalism background in terms of like I was in another field and then came here. My quote unquote sports journalism background started and has stayed in CrossFit. So seeing what that looks like in another avenue at a very high level was really cool too. And just getting to like every one of the athletes that we talked to was great. They were seeing the experience that Noble curated at the games and developed at the games, then get taken over to a different sport and have those athletes be wowed by it and appreciative of it was pretty cool too. It's like, hey, like all this you see, it's awesome that they love it because it was something that we got to see for CrossFit athletes first. And I thought that was really unique too. That was another interesting piece of like the cross section of the Venn diagram. So it was really fun. It was a very unique experience. I'm glad we got to do it. And I think it's a really cool way, if they continue to water to that right, that we can expose CrossFit, NFL athletes, all of these things, and have this nice unique blend and see some cool collaboration.
Yeah, for sure. The NFL Combine is just so marginal. I mean, you look at some of those 40 times, you look at the bench press numbers, the specifics for each position. I know they have the cone drill, and I know certain receivers are getting out and doing things. Bryce Young and some of the other quarterbacks are showing off accuracy and arm strength and footwork and foot speed. There's so many different intangibles that are just deeply being evaluated by the microsecond. And I've got a bunch of friends that have played in NFL, and it's like, after your combine, none of those things matter anymore. The number one thing that matters is, can you stay injury free?
Mm-hmm.
The best ability is availability. And that's what I've heard from a lot of my friends that have had significant careers, because NFL really stands for not for long. I think the average career is very similar to that of CrossFit. It's 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
The sport is really challenging, can beat you up if you don't take care of yourself. And it was interesting chatting with Sam Dancer and Pat Vellner recently around that concept of, they have so many lifetime reps in the sport of fitness. They don't necessarily need to chase volume like some of the younger athletes do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious. I didn't anticipate the conversation going here so fast, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you and I played traditional sports growing up, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of football, maybe a little bit of track, and maybe an influx of other things, riding bikes, skateboarding, and then that general athleticism then translated into the sport of fitness. A lot of these athletes are now starting as teens, potentially even younger, watching mom and dad from the kids area at local affiliates. Their lifetime reps are really high. I'm anticipating burnout and overuse injuries also being very high. I could also be incredibly wrong there, and we might see the growth and development of these super athletes, which we kind of see a little bit with Emma Lawson and Mal O'Brien and Justin Medeiros, just to name a few. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting position to see, because it feels like we're right at the cusp of maybe getting to see that play out in real time, right? Like, we have these first few batches of athletes that started at such a young age, and they're about to hit like their sweet spot of like, hey, they're here, they're going to be around for a while, but we just haven't gotten to the other side of that journey to where we're seeing the long-term effects of it. We've had a couple people, like, you go back and look, like Ben Smith, who showed up to the games at 19 and was able to maintain a decade-ish long career at the games, and is competing on a team now, and is still even involved in the sport and the methodology. So I think that is a little bit of a clue. Now, granted, his generation of CrossFit athletes wasn't exposed in the same way to the volume or at least I should say this, it's a little bit different now where the sport is compared to the first 3 to 4 years that he was doing it. Because I do think that the volume started to pick up in like the 2011, 2012, 2013 years, when everybody was looking at what Rich was doing, and they're like, oh gosh, I got to do 3 workouts a day. And maybe, it's kind of course corrected since then. But I also think there's more resources at these young athletes' disposal to maybe potentially ward off stuff like burnout. Obviously, Haley Adams is taking a year off, and you wish nothing but the best for her, and I hope she if she decides to comes back fired up and ready to go, and with a full heart and clear eyes. But I don't know. It's like, well, all these athletes have more resources at their disposal, but they're also starting at a younger age. Do we have to go through this kind of trial by fire or trial by error, let's figure out the sweet spot? I don't really know the answer to that. I think it's a major role of like the support systems of these athletes and people to make sure, like, hey, are you happy? And if this went away tomorrow, would you still be fulfilled as a human? Do you have things that fill your cup up and give you a backboard of support to, make you feel like you're not just an athlete in this regard? Because
and that's what I was going to say. The big word that came to mind is identity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're in the gym for 3 sessions, then you're fitting in zone 2 work, you're probably doing some sort of pliability or mobility work. You might go home and play with the Normatec or some of these recovery tools. You're constantly thinking about macros and appropriate fueling and the integration of supplements to try to enhance your recovery, there's not a lot of gaps anymore. You don't see within the top 20 on each side, you don't see a lot of, hey, I work this full-time job and then I'm coming over here to do CrossFit. It's all in, which is incredibly awesome and exciting for some. And then the other side of that coin is like, man, this could get really ugly. This could get really expensive on your future and how you are currently spending your time, unless you have the gift of seeing and taking the actionables of the transferable skills into the next chapter of their life. And for some people, this chapter may last longer than others. I really don't know the answer to that question either, but it is a healthy conversation, I think, to have.
Sure. That
should be tossed around a little bit. And the reason why I say it that way, I chatted with Camille LeBlanc-Bassinet and kind of some of her journey since transitioning from being a CrossFit Games champion to now leaning on fitness for, a little bit of physique occasionally, other times for health and wellness, her journey as a mom.
LMNT, pronounced element, is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means a science-backed electrolyte ratio with none of the junk. No sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and most importantly, no BS. Whether it's after a long workout, hot yoga, or an intense sauna and ice session, I've been using LMNT to keep me hydrated and replenishing all of my lost electrolytes. So many of us wake up chronically fatigued, and the antidote to this is salt water. Salt has previously been blamed for blood pressure issues, but new research shows that replenishing salt and electrolytes can lead to more energy, no headaches, a clear mind, and enhanced focus. Use the link drinklmnt.com/invictusmindset to make any purchase of LMNT, and you will receive a free sample pack with all of the LMNT flavors. Once again, that's drinklmnt.com/invictusmindset.
And what that's looked like and some of the complications she faced along the way, and how she wants to play in the world of significance and legacy and positively impacting the world with her tools. And it hasn't been super easy. When you get used to a certain lifestyle for over a decade, it's hard to just be like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to move on. It's like there's definitely weaning off that probably takes place.
Yeah, and that's not exclusive to athletes too. I think just in general in this space here, in this greater CrossFit ecosystem, we're a passionate bunch. We get, you get people that are all in and have been for a long time. And sometimes when you pull your hat out every once in a while, you're like, oh, well, what now? And I've personally, dealt with that. And a nice bit of perspective, like you mentioned, getting married in the last year, has been a way to pull myself out of this and step outside of this constant media, sport, CrossFit, training, athletes, all this stuff. And it's oh, I need to step out and go be a husband for a little while, go support my wife, go plan our life outside of this and all the things that are going to exist outside of this bubble that don't care who just hit a PR on Instagram or who just got this new sponsorship or who's looking like they're going to have a breakout year this year. There's a world that exists outside of it, and you can definitely balance the two. And it's, I think the more opportunities we can take to, I guess, I don't want to say disconnect, but step outside of it and be able to view it from a third, almost like a third person, bird's eye view or a third person perspective. I'm taking kind of a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy where you separate yourself from the issue and you're able to look at it with more objectivity is always beneficial. And but then again, it's also you have these athletes that are still 19, 20, 21. I had zero objectivity when I was 21 years old. So it's they're way ahead of the curve in that regard too.
It was all in. And I think now in the social media age, you're seeing that the performance markers and who you become in the pursuit of growth within the CrossFit space can open doors into what comes next, depending on how you play your cards. And so I think there's a lot of positive, potentially a lot of negative. But I really do want to keep that conversation going as the sport continues to evolve.
No doubt.
And with that being said, Tommy, we saw some things shift in the last few months. We saw major layoffs for CrossFit, some different changes, which I think piques the eyebrows of, what's going on with CrossFit leadership? What is the future of the sport? But then simultaneously, we're seeing probably more sponsors than we ever have before. We're seeing the winnings for athletes be monetarily higher than we've ever seen before. And, there's some really cool things with the development. And simultaneously, we're like, it doesn't seem like the foundation behind the scenes is super strong. And this is just me from the outside looking in. What are your thoughts on some of that?
I mean, it's also like in some ways perception can be reality unless you can provide proof otherwise, but like, and that's not to say one thing or the other, but it's like all those things on both sides are true, like they're adding new sponsors that they've just announced, but also they went through layoffs. So it seems like there's this very much a shifting landscape, and it's kind of hard to put a finger on because one, we're in the middle of the season, right? So things are, blasting right ahead. We're about 2 days from kicking off semifinals. I would say like it's hard to really put a finger on it one way or the other. Now, if it were just one or just the other, if we were just adding a bunch of sponsors, and we didn't have all the layoffs, that might be a good sign. But that doesn't mean that there isn't more stuff going on behind the scenes. It's hard for me to really like say one way or the other. I know that's a big non-answer, but I've been like it. I have a weird, unique perspective just because I've been a part of those layoffs. Yeah. So
you and Marston and Heber were the first people that came to mind when I saw some of that stuff. And if you just separate what we're discussing right now, like what is the future of the sport, and you just look at the empathy for each one of those people that is no longer in that position of employment and their families and their livelihood and their futures, it's definitely a challenging situation for sure. And you never want to see that, especially in the ecosystem and in the world that we love and try to foster to ensure that the job market stays appropriate and available for more people to, quite frankly, do what they love.
Yeah.
And so I think we're both in the same boat, a gentle loss of words, but simultaneously hopeful for the best. And seeing the optimist side of things and just trying our best to hope that the sport continues to navigate in the right direction.
Yeah. Because I think that's exactly where I net out is like empathy for those people because I've been through that, and whether you agree with it or not, whether the underlying cause behind it is great or not, like it's not going to change the reality, right? Like, but it sounds super cliche, but like what can you control in that instance, right? You can control how you react. You can control how you move forward from that. And those of us who have been through it before can control the empathy and compassion that we take towards that process, while also understanding that, like, I imagine that CrossFit wouldn't have made this change if they didn't have to, or at least like that's what you hope. So there's not much more you can jump into that without having more information on what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure, man. Moving on, thinking about the growth and trajectory of the sport, we've talked a lot recently around judging. And we have this judges course. We're trying to ensure fairness, especially in online qualifiers where there's lots of discrepancy. We have the concept of subjective and objective standards. Some are more clear than others. Obviously, you're testing such a broad range of things that not everything can be super simple and black and white. Sometimes a lockout is you're not sure. So sometimes the standards are a little bit unclear. And then we've got guys like HillerFit that are making these videos that are coming out, and some of them you're like, all right, this guy's got a good point. And then other times they're overly aggressive to the athlete, which seems a little bit unfair. I want to carefully and make sure that I'm presenting both sides to the equation, because I definitely think that there's positives and negatives to both.
Sure.
But it seems to be something that is a gentle problem every single season. What are your thoughts as to some of the ways to enhance some of these online qualifiers and make judging a little bit more black and white, so it's very clear that everybody is on the same playing field?
Yeah, it's tough because I think that it's a pretty sizable task. I will say that I think a lot of it can start and stop with communication. How well as an organization you communicate, how openly you communicate with transparent information can be a big way to wall off, some of the uncertainty and doubt that ultimately leaves a vacuum for people to fill it with whatever information they want, Mm-hmm. And if you're going to leave things up to question, and not, fill the void with definitive answers and give an opportunity to provide clarity and context for people that need it, then you're also leaving it up to whoever wants to fill that void. And you may like the answer, you may not like the answer. The person may have a point, they may not. So I don't know. I think you can play a little bit better defense by playing some offense on that regard from a communication. And I think that's always been, that's been any major organization that's going to be part of the equation, I think, right? Like how well can you get out there and communicate the things that you want to communicate, let everyone know what your intent is behind this, where the successes and pitfalls are. Cause I think that's a big part of it too, right? Like we all know that it hasn't been perfect. I'm sure they know, but let's have an open conversation about it. So it doesn't just feel like, your head's buried in the sand. And I think, totally. I think that's a totally fair criticism. And I think most people would agree with that. So, I think in many ways, being a little bit more openly communicative, I think they've made strides in that regard. We've talked with Brent and Pat and stuff like that about how much communication has gone between things like the PFAA before. And then I also think leaving avenues open for feedback and people to provide meaningful feedback that can help affect change too. So, and I think the online format is just going to be so tricky with that. But I'm not the best person in terms of like, this is a great standard, this is a bad standard. I think people like Pat and Brent have really good perspectives on that. And the more that you can lean on these athletes to weigh in on these scenarios like this in a way that's beneficial is going to be huge. I think the athletes are a great resource for that.
I agree with that. I also think I love playing the other side or just throwing out devil's advocate, but you and I love NBA basketball. Mm-hmm. As the sport evolves, you see things that look like palming. You see certain step backs that look like traveling. You see certain innovations that come from the sport that, quite frankly, are artistry in motion. Mm-hmm. You're trying to move fast. You're trying to find an advantage over your competition. You're trying to skirt the line of the rules to do something that's gently unorthodox to give yourself an advantage. Mm-hmm. That's what we're seeing a little bit.
Yeah.
People are finding unique ways that maybe were not thought about when you're going through the movement standards with the demo team.
This episode is brought to you by Mush. My friends over at Mush created an incredibly cool product of ready-to-eat overnight oats. And for those of you that listen to the podcast often, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And Mush has done just that, as their products have no more than 7 clean ingredients that are dairy-free, gluten-free, with no added sugar. Mush started right here at Invictus, as they had a vision to create convenient, healthy, and clean nutrition. And this landed them on Shark Tank, where the famous Mark Cuban invested in them. Now they're found in retailers all over the country, including Costco, Sprouts, Target, and Whole Foods. Check out my friends over at www.eatmush.com.
And all of a sudden, the creativity steps in. It's like, whoa, we didn't actually know that was possible previously, which shows that the sport is moving in the right direction and makes for better questions, better commentary, Is it gently annoying if you lose out on a spot? Yes. But I also think that there's something really cool about it. And over communication is going to be the answer for sure over time, and how clearly defined the written rules are. And a great example of that brought up by Pat Bellner is, in these tests that were released for semifinals, you have that seated legless rope climb.
Yeah.
Does seated mean just seated, and then after you get off the ground, it doesn't need to be an L anymore at the hip crease? Does it mean once you hit that top piece, you can just let go and fall to the bottom? They don't really specify the shape. They also don't specify the descent. That leaves it up to the athlete interpretation. And so that's a great example for some of these semifinal tests of something that was maybe under-communicated, whether that's purposeful or not. I don't know.
I think that one might be purposeful, because I do think there's, and this is just coming back from like game experience at the games and regionals and I guess even semifinals with common movements. They'll present it, and then the rest of it will get kind of briefed on site.
Yep.
And that's intentional. But I the basketball analogy is so appropriate, because I do think that like, you look at what a step back is in the NBA now, or what a gather step is in the NBA now. If you or I ever did that playing basketball growing up, we'd get a whistle for a travel 9 times out of 10. The way point guards carry the ball through a pick and roll up top, a high pick and roll is a carry, by the letter of the law. But there is room for, I guess, artistic interpretation. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that should be something for CrossFit. It's a little bit different. Also, these athletes, like NBA players, are superstars. They make 10x. The basic a middle of the road player makes 10x what the top CrossFit athlete makes. So it's a little bit different, but anytime you have judging, refereeing, you can make it as objective as possible, but the human element is going to add subjectivity into it. But it doesn't. That doesn't mean we can't, try to make the judge's life a little bit easier overall. But yeah, it's so funny because like half of the rules in the NBA have shifted in the last decade, and it changes. What's a charge?
I'm over here with a little smirk because I knew that analogy was quite the reach, and I love that you called me out for it.
Oh man, but it's so true though. Like a Euro step didn't exist 12 years ago.
Well, not just that, but you make such a great point around the monetization, right? Like now we're at a place in the CrossFit space where that rep matters. 1 or 2 reps on a ring muscle up lockout or a thruster. If you're getting no rep for depth, there's certain things that are based up to the interpretation of the judge. That matters. That is huge within the placement, within the sponsorships, within the monetization that comes, which is now the livelihood. And so it does bring a very serious element to the table for conversation around educating judges, potentially on some of the online qualifiers. I threw out the idea of having like testing centers, the way you do for like credentials, which may be too expensive. I'm not really sure, just threw it out there as an idea. And there's a lot going on there. But with that being said, we're seeing some uncommon movements thrown into the semifinals currently with that cool gymnastics complex with the ruck bag, 1 toe to ring, 1 ring muscle up, 1 ring dip. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I've played around with that complex a little bit after it came out just to see what it feels like. In many ways, it feels like a nuisance in a way, just to kind of tax the grip a little bit. And I've been waiting to kind of see some sort of like full ring complex in some capacity, whether it's muscle up plus an extra dip or something like that. And I think just the way that, at least for me, the toes to ring plays out, it's a slightly different kip swing and where my body moves in that shape, just enough to where it like forces me to kind of like have to expend a little bit more mental energy on where my body positioning is on the rings as I gear up for the next ring muscle up. I think it's cool in theory, and I like to see it. I'm really curious to see how it plays out on the competition floor. I don't think many athletes will struggle with it that much, at least in the first couple of rounds.
The ruck back definitely throws out an element of fear of potentially falling through the rings, You mentioned that first kip being a little bit more linear. You don't really have to pull back on the strap too much for the toe to ring. But then all of a sudden you might over kip going into the ring muscle up, or think that you need to do a traditional kip and then you come up a little bit short because of the extra poundage from the ruck bag that's also located on the back, not evenly distributed like a weight vest where it can be a little bit easier in the turnover. So some cool takeaways there. What are your thoughts on the pirouettes that we saw on the handstand piece with those 3 turns? I'm not really sure if they're going to be just 3 turns in one box, or 1 turn, move to the next box, next turn, move to the next box. I'm not really sure.
I mean, you look at the how it was implemented. What was it at the games last year during the speed skill medley? I always get those mixed up. Where they had to walk forward, do a pirouette, and walk out. It just seems like that's kind of the standard, like, hey, let's have you move, do it, have you move, do it, have you move, do it. Because that just seems to fit in line more along of what Boz is maybe shooting for in terms of like, I don't just want you spinning your wheels. I want you to do it, show control, do it again, show control, do it again, show control, in a way that's seems to be where he's pushing these gymnastics progressions. I also think that plays with the rings too, right? Like, there's an element of control around that rings complex that I think maybe forces the athletes a little bit more to move a little bit slower than they might want, than just ripping off ring muscle ups and going at speed and be a little bit more precise. So I thought when we saw the pirouettes show up last year, I was like, oh, I think we might see more of those for sure. I didn't think we'd see them necessarily at semifinals this year, and we still have to wait and see how it's going to be implemented as far as like what do they have to do to actually get it done. But who doesn't practice pirouettes or turns around like a cone or anything like that, like in your gym when you're practicing handstand walking? Like that seems like a natural piece of the puzzle that maybe we just hadn't explored yet.
Just to be a classic contrarian, we talked about the NFL Combine. I'm sure it happens in your gym. I'm sure you've been a part of the conversation. We have it just about every day, which is, how do we define athleticism, right? You look at the NFL Combine of like sprinting, jumping, change of direction, throwing a ball. No disrespect to CrossFit athletes, but like I've spent a lot of time with them, and sometimes the ball sports are challenging. They're incredible at lifting weights, incredible at gymnastics. But some of these specialty items, like, why are they so biased towards gymnastics, right? Why are they so biased towards weightlifting? For someone like myself, it's like, I'm never going to win those events. But look at like an Elijah Muhammad. What if there was a dunk contest? He's very athletic, but doesn't seem to be winning the CrossFit Games because things seem, in my humble opinion, a little bit human trick biased. We're not seeing Jason Hopper be able to express his football prowess and push something all the way down the field with explosiveness, like a blocking dummy of some sort.
Yeah.
It's something I see a lot. They got rid of the softball toss because a lot of these athletes looked like they were shot putting a ball as opposed to throwing it a few years back. Right?
All the Europeans never grew up throwing a ball, so.
Exactly. And so, I don't know, man. Like, I'm seeing a little bit of a anti-sports bias, in my humble opinion. And, well, I wish there was a little bit more. I guess you could argue the accuracy component of a wall ball, a higher target, and all those things play a factor. But I think, humbly, that there's a little bit of a gymnastics bias. And I'm also saying that because you're starting to see a body type in CrossFit that fits. The Fikowskis are starting to fade. You're not seeing Hopper in the top of the conversation all the time anymore. He's simply too big, and it's force times distance over time, which then leads to a little bit of challenge in the sport of fitness. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so regarding the body type and all that showing up, if we're being honest, I actually think we saw that happening even a decade ago. I guess with any sport that doesn't have multiple positions, you're going to start to see that naturally. You go back to 2013, right? Like the only athletes that were north of 6 feet were Spencer Hendel and Asia Bartow, right? And they were, Asia nicknamed the Behemoth, right? He named his CrossFit after that. But I guess it just makes sense, and we may not always be prepared for it. But it's like for the men, the 5'9", 5'10", 195 for the women. What is it, 5'5", maybe 145 seems to be about the sweet spot. With you see some varying body types in between. How well can you move your body weight while not be losing enough ground on the machines and things like that favor larger body types? I don't know. It's something that we've been talking about for probably a decade, and it's something that like it's hard to have an opinion on other than like let's just see what comes out. Let's see what athlete gets spit out, because the sport will dictate that. Like I can say, hey, this is the best body type, or I think this person's going to work, but the athletes that show up to the games are the living proof of it, And it's like, it's the reason why, most point guards in the NBA are 6'3" or below, Now, granted, you do have the freaks, you do have Jokic bringing the ball up, you do have LeBron playing point forward, but it's just a natural part of it. I think that stuff is cool, right? Like we're just like self-selecting. It's like this little bit of survival of the fittest in a very small, controlled environment. But
totally. I love bringing that to the forefront of the athletic conversation, and bringing my personal bias into the conversation just to stir up controversy a little bit. It's always fun.
Oh, I mean, I love to throw jokes around the gym that the only reason I'm losing to all the short people is because they're short. But, it's, just wait for the rowing and wall ball workout to come up. But even then they're getting good at that too. So it doesn't, my excuses are waning.
For sure, man. I know you got to run here in a little bit. As we wrap it up, Tommy, what are your predictions for 2023? Who are your top 3 women and then top 3 men?
My top 3 women, I think, are going to be, in no particular order, Mal, Laura, and Emma Lawson.
Ooh.
And then...
You would say no particular order.
And then I think... I'm going to say Justin Roman and Jeffrey Adler.
Wow. Those seem to be the 3 names that are thrown around a little bit. I personally hope Vellner can sneak in there.
Yeah, the thing that gives me pause is I think Vellner does a really good job of adapting to the games level, outside event that you see at the North Park that has some weird sandbag stuff, some high skill gymnastics. He always seems to win those. And some years, most of because he does take a lot of gambles. He'll admit that. He'll pick his spots. On the years that they've paid off in recent, he finishes second. Last year he had a few that didn't pay off, and he finished 6th. It's weird though. He finishes 6th, and people feel like he finished outside the top 10, like he's dead. Let's give the guy a little bit more credit here. He won an event, and he's still up there with some of the best. So I do think Vellner can be in that mix for sure.
Well, I look forward to an awesome season and following you and Sean Woodland and your newest addition, Lauren Khalil, on your journey of reporting all the highs and lows and the peaks and valleys and amazingness behind the scenes of the sport of fitness. What can we expect from Talking Elite Fitness, man?
Oh, man. We got some semifinals coverage coming up. We're going to have some daily hits from the studio, trying to give the biggest and most important moments from each day for, as far as the competition is concerned. And then, hopefully be out there in Madison at the games, getting to call some of that action, bringing some highlights and some fun stuff. And hopefully, as we always try to bring at least a little bit of fun into the scenario and not have it all be serious. So we'll definitely have that and maybe a few Marvel references from me.
There you go, man. Well, thanks for doing this. Always fun chopping it up with you. I look forward to seeing you in Pasadena, Tommy.
Likewise, man. Thank you.
If you guys enjoyed my conversation with Tommy Marquez today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Till next time, guys.
Are you over 35 and in need of a solid training program? Are you looking to improve your athleticism and keep up with the younger athletes in your CrossFit gym? Then look no further than our Invictus Masters program. This program places year-round emphasis on mobility and stability exercises with movements that we have seen directly benefit our Masters athletes. Our program is led by Nicole DeHart and offers a training program designed specifically for Masters athletes who are looking to compete at a higher level in the sport of CrossFit. Some of our top Masters athletes in the world train with us, including CrossFit Games champion Kevin Kester, Matt Beals, and Pat Sprague. You can learn more about their stories and the Invictus Masters program by checking out their episodes right here on the Invictus Mindset Podcast. If you'd like more information about the current training cycle or to join the Invictus Masters program, please email Nicole at invictusathlete.com. That's NICHOLE at invictusathlete.com.